Civil War. And what I think of the Civil War, what was the cause of the Civil War? Of course the Civil War was about slavery. We know that. That's unquestioned, always the case. We know the Civil War was about slavery. But it was also more than that. It was about the freedoms of every individual. It was about the role of government. The lessons of what that bigger issue with the Civil War is that let's not forget what came out of that, which is government's role, individual liberties, freedom for every single person, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to do and be anything you want to be without anyone or government getting in your way. That should be the goal of what we always try and take away from that, right?
No, that's a horrible, horrible response. First of all, you did not say slavery last night and then move on to talk about other things. You skipped it. You went to those other things. So don't try to pretend that it was so obvious you didn't need to mention it and then got angry when the guy brought it up. So that's absolute BS. And then her attempt to be like, no, you guys are in the mud. I care about philosophy. What came out of it was respect for the rights of everyone, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. No. Like we're talking about like 80, 90 years after the Bill of Rights. That stuff already existed for a whole bunch of people. Now we're focusing on, will it actually apply to Black people in America, to those who are being held as slaves in America? Eventually, we might get around to, should women be able to vote? And of course, they didn't want rights for gay and trans people as well. That's a part of the culture war that she's still eagerly a part of. So trying to like throw it to, no, we're just talking about general concepts of freedom and speech and all that. That is not what was being decided. You can say that that's what the Revolutionary War was about, perhaps. That we can have a conversation. But this was very specifically not about government's role, but government's role in regulating whether you can hold humans as property, whether humans can be treated like they're shovels or rakes or something. That's what it was actually about. You know that, and more importantly, you know the sort of people that you desperately need to vote for you in southern states. And I don't need to tell you what those people think about race in America. You're telling all of us what you think those people think about race in America. And by the way, we're gonna go to a little bit more of her history because she's cloaking how bad she's been on this topic for a very long time. But I don't want to give you a chance to jump in.
I just think it's hilarious while she stands there with her ski sweater on, such in her elite, in her eliteness, and sits there and says, "Of course it is," as if it is something that's, as a matter of fact, we all know about this, but. The fact that she said that, the self-determination of people that have been dehumanized, any race, the erasure of slavery is what is really so obnoxious about her. But and when I said about the education, I'm talking about who she's talking to. And the fact that nobody insults that base more than the people who want them to support them. You hear all of the stuff that they say to the right wingers, the Republican people. They insult their intelligence on a daily basis. They expect them not to know, not to have the information. They stoke their hate. They're like, listen, if we talk about the immigrants, if we talk about Black people, we talk about crime, we talk about people trying to take away their stuff, they're gonna stay too angry. They're not gonna learn the real information, and we can continue to manipulate them, and we can continue to drive them in the direction that we want to drive them. That is not how they say it blatantly, but that is certainly the context. And many of us who are fluent in context understand what's happening here. So shame on you if you allow these people to play with your feelings and play in your face while you don't have health care, you don't have a good books at the school for your children, you don't feel safe where you go, and they take your money. And look what she's telling you how much of a lavish life she's living while she's talking to American people with her ski sweater on, when the average American person cannot even afford a gym membership. So I just think it's so interesting to me that these people want to follow. It's idolizing. It has nothing to do with politics. It's idolatry at this point. And it's very sad because it has driven this country into being the toilet bowl that it is.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and as you said, it is so like they have no respect for their own base. I understand, like we're the libs or whatever, so like we always look down on these people. Okay, that's fine, you can make that case, but we're not the ones trying to get those people to vote for us. The people they're trying to get to vote for them are the ones who are utterly disrespecting them. By the way, we're gonna talk later on the show about Chris Matthews and about people disrespecting rural voters. This is what true disrespect is like. It's someone like Nikki Haley who knows better and thinks these people are too stupid to accept what actually happened, so racist that they'll never evolve, and I don't care. Like, they're the ones I say I love, but I'm not going to try to help them to understand what really happened in America. Now, really fast, I just want to show you, like, this is not just she slipped up in this forum and now she's sort of repairing it. She has been awful in this area in the exact same way for well over a decade. Here is Nikki Haley in a video back from 2010.
What's your belief about the reason the Civil War was fought?
I mean, again, I think that as we look in government, as we watch government, you have different sides. And I think that you see passions on different sides. And I don't think anyone does anything out of hate. I think what they do is they do things out of tradition and out of beliefs of what they believe is right. I think you had one side of the Civil War that was fighting for tradition, and I think you had another side of the Civil War that was fighting for change. You know, at the end of the day, what I think we need to remember is that, you know, everyone is supposed to have their rights. Everyone's supposed to be free. Everyone's supposed to have the same freedoms as anyone else. So, you know, I think it was tradition versus change is the way I see it.
Tradition versus change on what?
On individual rights and liberty of people.
That is so terrible. It's tradition. Yeah, that's the tradition and change for that tradition. Is this vague enough? And then the guy presses, yeah, which tradition? Which exact tradition were they fighting for? Freedoms in a general sense, something philosophical. No, this is not. It's so obvious I don't need to mention it's so obvious that if I mention it, it's gonna hurt me politically, so I'm gonna pretend not to understand that slavery was a thing. That's who she actually is and still is. It is important to note that she was that way, 5 years before Donald Trump came down that escalator, and she's still saying the same sort of stuff. And she's the person who's supposed to be the respectable, responsible, serious politician alternative to Donald Trump. She is on topics like this just as garbage as he is, doing the exact opposite of telling it like it is, telling it like I desperately need to pretend that it is.
I feel the fact that she said, when she talked about tradition and beliefs, she's indirectly supporting that as Americans, some people have the right to believe that other people in America are less than human. And it's this, it's this like silent call to and this silent whistle to fellow racist and anti-Black people when you hear that kind of talk. And it's like, well, that was the belief system of the time, and that was what people believed. That doesn't make it right. There were a lot of people who didn't believe that was right, that were not Black people. The fact that you made it an enterprise and you made it a profitable business, and that so many of you people who have benefited from it are still benefiting from it to this day. And some people who are suffering from it are still suffering from it this day. It's just appalling. And I don't think we should just be, cool about this type of stuff, because this is bleeding into the country and it is causing far more problems. And the abuse of Black people in this country continues. It is so disgusting, man. I don't know. I don't even know what to hope for anymore at this point. It really feels just hopeless when you think about the hands that this country is in.
I don't think that it's hopeless. At any given time, an asteroid could hit Earth. I mean, any moment that could happen. So yeah, the last thing I want to say about this before we move on to Chris Christie, we'll save Laura Loomer for another day for time. But it's this weird thing with like poor conservatives get caught up and believe that they're part of this movement that is like anti-elite. It's this populist thing. We're against the elites. How dare you elites talk down to us? Meanwhile, we love New York billionaire Donald Trump and Elon Musk is great too. He's literally the richest man in the world. But that is not just a new thing where they worship those politicians and they worship hosts on Fox, every one of whom is a millionaire. It has been going on forever. They still talk with these worshipful terms effectively in defending the slave owners. The slave owners were so rich and owned so much that they owned people. And they're still like 150 years later, they're fighting for how awesome those people were and how dare you be mean to them. They don't care that these slave owners took tons of poor Southerners and threw them into a meat grinder so that they could keep owning other people as property. And the propaganda was so effective that we're gonna go centuries before they finally move on from trying to rewrite the history of that. I don't understand how they don't understand how they're being played by the rich and have been for generations upon generations.